Do you guys remember in 2020 when the world seemed to be captivated by the trial of Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard? Well, next year, I feel like we're going to have that trial 0.20. If you don't know, there is a huge legal battle that's happening between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively, who are the two main co-stars in the movie that came out in August of 2024, It Ends With Us. Now, if you're anything like me, my For You page on TikTok has literally been flooded with what has been happening between the two. And if I'm honest, I feel like every single day something new comes out, and I didn't want to wait a whole year to make a video and cover the trial. I probably will once the trial starts, but I also just wanted to make a video talking about some of my initial thoughts of what's taking place, but also share with you guys who may be like, what the heck is happening? Share with you guys information, share with you guys a timeline, and I'm recording this video January 27th, and the reason I'm sharing that is because I feel like every single day for the last month and a half, something new has come out about this case. So this may be out and published, and new stuff may have already come out since I've been able to put this on YouTube. So let's dive on in to this mess together. Now, if this is your first time stumbling upon this page, first let me say welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Anastasia. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm obsessed with all things mental health, therapy, pop culture, reality TV, faith. If that interests you, I would love for you to go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and be sure to comment because I would love to hear from you. Now, I have been just overwhelmed with this whole Justin Baldoni versus Blake Lively legal battle that has literally been unfolding in front of our eyes. And I want to walk you guys through the timeline and share some information from what I know that's been taking place, and then just share some of my brief thoughts throughout. Because I figured who better to process this with than you guys. Now, we're going to actually start in 2016. So in 2016, the book It Ends With Us, which is written by Colleen Hoover, is officially published. Now, I honestly don't know about like the numbers or how well it did when it first came out, but in 2019, so about 3 years later, Justin Baldoni, who at the time I think was most well known for playing a character in Jane the Virgin. Now, don't come at me. I could not get into Jane the Virgin. I know, people love that show, and I just can't get into it. So I honestly didn't know of Justin Baldoni until It Ends With Us and the drama behind it. Anyway, in 2019, he decides to buy the rights to the book. He wants to partner with Colleen Hoover, collaborate with her, and create a movie to help equip, empower, and encourage women who have found themselves in similar situations to the main character. Now, if you're one of those people out there that you're like, I don't even know what this book is about, here's a brief, very brief synopsis. Now, the book It Ends With Us focuses on the main character, Lily Bloom. And yes, she owns a flower shop. Now, let me just also say, before I go further, I think Colleen Hoover has great story ideas. Is she a great writer? Not really. Okay, moving forward. So Lily Bloom is the main character, and in the book, it goes back and forth between young Lily Bloom, so like high school Lily Bloom, to an adult Lily Bloom, which in the book, it feels like she's in the mid-20s, which is part of the drama of Blake Lively, but we'll get to that in a minute. So in the book, young Lily Bloom is close with a boy named Atlas. I think Atlas really becomes Lily's first true love in the book. Now, young Lily Bloom also has parents who are in a very toxic, abusive relationship. So she kind of grows up watching her dad really mistreat, abuse her mom. Now, the mom, I believe, never leaves. And in the book, the dad passes away. Now, adult Lily Bloom kind of leaves that life behind her. She owns a flower shop and she seems to love what she's doing until she meets a guy named Ryle. Now, Ryle in the book is this charming, seemingly like really strong, affluent doctor who is just really charismatic, and it turns into a relationship. Now, quickly we find out, once they enter into a relationship, we find out that Ryle is actually an abuser himself. Again, he's well off and he's charming and handsome, but very abusive in the relationship with Lily. Now, the story goes on and they end up getting pregnant. So Lily has Ryle's baby, and one of like the last moments of the book, Lily's looking at Ryle in like the hospital and was like, do you want somebody to hit your daughter? Would you ever want somebody to hurt your daughter? And he's like, no. So the book kind of alludes to him maybe getting help or whatnot. But the very last line of the book is Lily looks at her daughter and says, it ends with us. So basically the idea of we're going to do better for ourselves. We're going to find the strength within ourselves to not be in any kind of domestic violence relationship. So that's kind of the premise of the book. So again, 2019, Justin's like, I want to buy the rights. I want to create this movie and I want to give a voice to the voiceless. I want to help people who find themselves in domestic violence situations to find the power within themselves or to be encouraged or equipped to lead those domestic violence situations. Now, we're going to jump to 2021. TikTok has literally taken over the world because everybody got bored in 2020 and started going on TikTok, me being one of them. And BookTok becomes a huge thing in 2021. I don't know how it literally blew up, but one of the books that blew up via BookTok was actually Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us. There was actually quite a few Colleen Hoover books that blew up. Still, I don't know how because her writing is honestly not that good, but this book blew up, and so people were now excited when they found out that the rights had been bought by Justin Baldoni to make a movie because it felt like millions of people now had read the book and were excited. And in their minds, they had pictured a young Lily Bloom, young and fresh and sweet and just kind of innocent, but also strong. And so people were definitely disappointed when in 2023, Colleen Hoover announces that Blake Lively is playing Lily Bloom. So in January 2023, it's announced that Blake Lively is playing Lily Bloom. But not only that, it's also announced that Justin Baldoni, the director, the one who bought the rights to the book, is going to be playing Ryle. Now, when Blake was initially announced, as I mentioned, it just was not received well because I think people thought of like Sadie Sink in their mind when they thought Lily Bloom. Just a young, fresh version of Lily Bloom was expected. And I will say, I think Blake Lively is absolutely stunning, gorgeous. I think people just had somebody different in mind. I'll be honest, I had somebody different in mind. But not only that, so filming starts around the beginning of 2023. And of course, set pictures are starting to come out. Not only were they upset that Blake Lively was playing Lily Bloom, but all of a sudden these pictures are coming out of her wearing these outfits that were like really odd, mismatched. And it just didn't feel like the character Lily Bloom from the book at all. Now, obviously, when people take books and make them into movies, there's going to be creative freedom for sure. But I felt like it was so disconnected from the book that people were starting to get worried of like, are we going to lose the essence of the importance of this book? Because yes, the writing's not great, but I feel like the essence or the message of the book was powerful. And I think people were nervous. Are we going to lose that sense of powerful message? Because honestly, these outfits are completely throwing us off. Now, if you guys remember in May 2023, there was this huge writer's strike and it lasted for quite a few months. So there was no filming and there's supposed to be nothing happening when the strike was taking place. So I believe they started filming once the strike was over, which I believe was late that year, like December or beginning of January 2024. Filming wraps up and then July of 2024 hits. And that's when like the press tour for It Ends With Us starts to take place. Now, a couple of things were happening that really seemed to frustrate a lot of people. Number one, and probably the biggest thing, was Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, again, the two main characters, Lily Bloom and Ryle, were not seen together in any press interviews. Any of them. Which is so unlikely, the fact that the two main characters are not seen in one press interview for the press of their movie. So people were really frustrated and they knew that something was off. And there had been rumors or there had been like little things of, is there tension on the set? And this proved to be so when they weren't even seen together at any of the press tours. It seemed that Blake Lively took a lot of the cast under her wing and so they would go with her. And Justin Baldoni was kind of by himself. So it seemed like the cast had picked Blake Lively, but then it was rumored that the producers and the crew, so people behind the scenes, had picked Justin Baldoni's side, which we'll get to more of that in a minute. Anyway, July is happening and they're doing all this press tour. Now, just a side note, as this movie is coming out, Ryan Reynolds, who is married to Blake Lively since I believe like 2011, 2012, his movie Deadpool with Hugh Jackman is coming out at this time as well. So they have this big movie and box office hit that just came out right before It Ends With Us, which is his wife, and they're wanting another big box office hit. A lot of people assumed that Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively were wanting like a Oppenheimer Barbie moment. And if you don't remember, in 2023, the summer of 2023, Oppenheimer came out and Barbie came out, and both were big hits. And so in 2024, a lot of people thought that Reynolds and Lively wanted the same effect. Now, I've never watched Deadpool, will never watch Deadpool. From what I know, Deadpool is like a really sarcastic, really derogatory kind of like character, superhero, villain, I don't know. And then with It Ends With Us, it's a movie literally that talks about domestic violence and is a movie that was meant to empower, encourage, and equip people who find themselves in that situation or who have found themselves in that situation to find the power within them to continue to move forward or to move forward from the situation. So definitely different tones than Oppenheimer and Barbie. So back to the press tour. There were moments where Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman were literally doing interviews with the guy who plays Atlas. And it was this really lighthearted but sarcastic interview. And people were thrown off because, again, the undertone of It Ends With Us was really serious. And it didn't seem like it was being taken serious by the main characters. Now, the only person who seemed to really speak on the heart of It Ends With Us seemed to be Justin Baldoni, where he was talking about wanting to empower people, wanting to really shine a light to domestic violence. And it seemed like Blake Lively was just having a fun dress-up press tour. Which leads me to another reason people were really upset with this press tour, especially when it came to Blake Lively. Now, Blake Lively, I feel like, is really known for her hair. Whether people think it always looks like a mess or people love it. I personally think it has always looked good and wonderful, messy, but like it works for her. So during the press tour, she officially announces her line of Blake Brown Beauty, I believe it is. It's a hair care line. So people are like, wait, you're using this opportunity while promoting a movie based off of domestic violence and getting out of that situation to promote your hair care line? Not done in the best way at all. Last but not least, and there's definitely some other stuff, but I would say the other biggest thing that really frustrated people about this press tour when it came to Blake Lively's side of things was there were multiple interviews where she, again, just took this movie and the topic. It seemed like it was so light to her and didn't seem to read the book at all. When she would be asked about the character, she would do these like kind of explanation where it felt like she was trying to fill in all these words without actually saying anything. And people were like, did you even read the book? It's one of those things where your professor's like, okay, I need 1,000-word essay, but you only have 100 words. So you have to find 900 random words to make it 1,000. That's what it felt like watching her doing these interviews. And then another part of the interviews, she talked about bring your girlfriends, wear your florals, and come catch It Ends With Us. And it again felt like it was supposed to be this lighthearted, fun movie. And there were actually quite a few people who hadn't read the book, who didn't know what the movie's about, who saw that and they thought, okay, it's a light, fluffy movie. And they went and they actually got triggered by the movie. So it just was not going well at all, again, for Blake Lively and how she seemed to be promoting this movie. So the movie comes out in August and it actually does pretty well. I think it makes about $351 million. It's considered a box office success. Too bad that the success of this movie is completely overshadowed by what happens after the movie. So the movie comes out in the beginning of August. Mid-August, it is rumored and then found out to be true that Justin Baldoni actually hires Johnny Depp's, remember how I mentioned in the beginning, Johnny Depp's PR team. And people are like, that's suspicious. That's weird. Why is he hiring a PR team that did what they did for Johnny Depp for him? There must be stuff that's about to come out that isn't good for him. And he's already trying to cover his butt before anything comes out. So it honestly doesn't look great. But people are like, okay, well, let's hold on. Let's see what's happening. Because again, like I mentioned, there had been rumors of tension between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. So much so, when the movie premiered, they weren't even seen on the carpet together. That's actually crazy. Like every time I think about that, I'm like, what? Stories coming out, alleged from Blake Lively's camp team, somebody on that side, talking about how uncomfortable Blake Lively actually felt while filming It Ends With Us. One of the biggest claims that came out of those stories was Blake Lively felt she was fat shamed by Justin Baldoni, and it completely destroyed her confidence. Now, the story allegedly is Justin Baldoni had talked to Blake Lively's trainer to say, hey, where's she at weight-wise? Because I have to be careful for the lift scene because my back has had a lot of problems and I just need to make sure that I'm taking care of my back. That's allegedly the story. Again, we will probably never know the truth of any of this. But anyway, that's the story. But Blake Lively apparently allegedly has spun it to say, I was fat shamed by Justin Baldoni. I had just had a kid and he just made the whole set uncomfortable for me. Now, another thing to note here before I continue is from what I've read, what I've seen, what I've heard, Justin Baldoni has promoted himself as a feminist, as somebody who stands up for women, who believes women. He has really stood on the belief that he is for women. He stands for them. He loves them. He wants to empower, encourage, all that. So just again, keep that in mind. Over the next couple weeks, couple months, as this movie's again being shown and gaining popularity, there's also a lot of stuff that's now happening, I would say, on TikTok, where there are old interview clips or old things from press back in the day of Blake Lively that are not painting her in a very good light at all. Now, I think there's always been people who have maybe not cared for Blake Lively, which everybody's entitled to their opinion. But things like the fact that they were married on a plantation, her and Ryan Reynolds came out. The Gossip Girl press tours were coming out of the Wild Zoo, where there were so many pictures and so many videos of Blake Lively allegedly, assumingly, really just not being kind to her co-stars. Blake Lively was talking and they were talking about a monkey, because I guess in the books of Gossip Girl, Chuck Bass had a monkey and they're we can't act with a monkey, and Blake Lively's oh, I act with a couple monkeys now, referring to her cast as monkeys. But probably the most damaging in that was when she referred to Leighton Meester starting out in a cage. Now, if you don't know, just a brief history, Leighton Meester, who plays Blair Waldorf, who I love, always have loved, both of her parents were actually in jail when she was born. So to refer to her starting out in a cage, just really not kind, really insensitive. And I think the more I've watched interviews with Blake Lively, the more I realize I think she thinks she's being sarcastic. And I get sarcasm. I also think sometimes sarcasm is covering up oh, I'm just being sarcastic, but it's really them just being mean and rude and sharing their honest and real thoughts. One of the final interviews that I feel really did Blake Lively in regards to how people view her. She's being interviewed by a Norwegian interviewer, and it's for Cafe Society, which is a movie, I think, directed by Woody Allen, which, ew. And Blake Lively and her co-star are sitting here, and the interviewer is sitting in front of them. And the interviewer looks at her and says, well, congratulations on your bump, because Blake Lively's pregnant at that time. And I think it was public, if I'm not mistaken. And Blake Lively, instead of saying, thank you so much, I'm so excited, looks at the Norwegian interviewer. I can't say her name, or I would. I don't know how to pronounce it. But looks at her and says, well, congratulations on your bump. She's not pregnant. That's so rude. I don't know if she thought she was being funny. I don't know. And it's interesting because this interview, I think, is in 2016. And she gets frustrated because the interviewer, which it's not a great interview, I'll be honest, but the interviewer is asking about the outfits and the style, because I believe Cafe Society had a really unique style to it. I've never seen it, won't see it. But so she's talking about the style or the fashion, and Blake Lively will not address the interviewer at all, looks to her co-star and says, well, I wonder if the guys were asked about their outfits. And it's funny because this press tour, It Ends With Us, was all about the outfits, which we'll get to in a minute. Anyway, that kind of was the nail in the coffin in regards to Blake Lively's public perception. December 9th, Justin Baldoni actually receives an award for uplifting women, and it's from the Voices of Solidarity. And so he receives an award. I think it's actually for elevating women. And so that's great and all good until December 21st, when literal poop hit the fan. It was crazy. It was crazy. December 21st, so close to Christmas, by the way, Blake Lively officially files a legal complaint of sexual harassment and creating a smear campaign against Baldoni and his production team, Wayfair. She starts to release some text messages between, I believe, some of his like PR attorney people and him, and it doesn't look great because in the text messages, it even talks about how they can make her look like Haley Baldwin, kind of give her like the bad look, bad rep. Not only that though, that's obviously an issue, the legal complaint. Not only that, the New York Times publishes this huge article completely discrediting the character of Justin Baldoni. And not only did they publish it and publish the complaint that Lively had filed, they do so without giving Baldoni enough time to even share his side of things or give his statement. Now, they do contact him and say, hey, this is coming out tomorrow at this time, and you have this long to respond. But the time that they gave him, like I think they said till like noon the next day. They released that story at 10 a.m. the next day. So they didn't even go with the time that they had said, which is, again, actually crazy. So yeah, literal poop hits the fan. And all the co-stars, all the stars outside of Baldoni are right on board supporting Lively. Now, again, I don't know Justin Baldoni well, except for It Ends With Us and a little bit of the videos I had seen in regards to him promoting it. And so in my mind, I'm going to believe women. That's just where my mind goes. It's like, man, that really is horrible. If this is the case, that's actually so sad that you're on this movie talking about domestic violence and actually, sexually harassing the main character in the movie. I think a lot of people were honestly on the fence when it first came out. I think a lot of that was because there was so much coming out about Blake Lively and her past bad behavior that people were not quick to believe Blake Lively. So things start coming out, and one of the main things was when they had resumed filming. So remember when I said in May 2023, the strike had happened, so they couldn't film. So they resumed, I think at the end of 2023. Blake Lively had actually come back and said, we have to have a meeting. It was Justin Baldoni, I think maybe some of his people, Ryan Reynolds, and Blake Lively, and they all met. And there was like a list of 17 demands of what Blake Lively needed to resume filming. Apparently the tension had gotten so bad and it was so hostile, according to Blake Lively, that she had to create a list of demands of this is what I need from Justin Baldoni for him to do and not to do, from him and his team, for me to feel comfortable coming back and filming. Some of them would include, I need to make sure that there's an intimacy coordinator. I need to make sure that you just don't come into my room and talk about certain subjects that I'm not comfortable talking about. And it honestly just painted Justin Baldoni in a really bad, negative light. And Justin Baldoni is dropped from his management team. Now, quick note, his management team also is the management team of Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Taylor Swift. So, of course, they're going to be on the A-list, A-celebrity side versus Justin Baldoni, which again, not to discredit him, he's just not as well known or as affluent as those three and the others that are part of this management team. Not only that, but the award that he won on the 9th of December is now taken away from him as well. So Baldoni kind of stays quiet for a little bit. I think, which I mean would make sense, I think the lawsuit, when that lawsuit came out or the legal complaint came out, they thought it was going to be one and done, we're good, we're going to, get what we need and want, and we're done. But that's not how it's been played out. Justin Baldoni was like, I'm not going out without a fight, and I'm going to fight for my voice, and I'm going to fight for my character. So December 31st comes around, and he actually files a $250 million lawsuit against the New York Times. And he does this lawsuit because of the allegations that they put so publicly without giving him any kind of time to respond or share his side of the story. And so he sues them. January 16th is when the real battle, I feel like, truly began. Baldoni officially files a $400 million lawsuit against Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and he even mentions Taylor Swift in the lawsuit. So this is not some little, okay, we'll keep it quiet, we won't, say much. This is a $400 million lawsuit against very powerful people, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, while also mentioning literally one of the most famous people in the world, Taylor Swift. Now, if you don't know, Blake Lively and Taylor Swift are best friends. They have been best friends since, I believe, 2016 maybe. So Baldoni ends up suing them for civil extortion, defamation, and invasion of privacy. Not only does he file this lawsuit, but then receipts start coming. And I'm talking like CVS receipts. If you know, you know. These are not like just here and there. Long, big receipts start coming out. And all of a sudden, the narrative's starting to shift. And I'll be honest, it started to shift for me in my head of like, oh, Blake, honey, were we telling the truth? Because there's some pretty hard evidence that some things have been twisted that maybe aren't true. There are some text messages that were coming out, one of them being about the dressing room. And in Blake Lively's lawsuit, she talks about how he would just barge in without, asking or anything like that while she was breastfeeding and she'd feel uncomfortable. But there's text messages from Blake Lively to Baldoni saying, hey, yeah, I'm just breastfeeding. You can come in anytime. And he would let her know, hey, I'm coming. Another thing that Blake Lively had suggested Baldoni made her feel uncomfortable was by calling her sexy or saying things like that, where she just felt like, okay, that's inappropriate and we're not in character. You don't need to be doing that. Well, there's text messages where Blake Lively was talking to Baldoni, talking about how the beanie made her feel and look sexy. And so all of a sudden, the things that I thought I knew, I was like, it's all been twisted. Allegedly. So let's take it back for a second, because I mentioned the beanie. One of the big complaints and frustrations that people believe took place on the set was Blake Lively kind of took over the set. Now again, 2019, before the book was even popular, Justin Baldoni had bought the rights because he read the book. It was believed that Blake Lively started taking over the set. One of the big aspects that she took over was wardrobe. Like, she completely did her wardrobe. There are multiple interviews talking about how it was all her clothes and some from like Gigi Hadid. So she literally completely took over wardrobe, which again, if you remember, I mentioned people really had a hard time with the wardrobe of Lily Bloom because it did not feel like Lily Bloom from the book. Not only did she start to take over wardrobe, but then it was mentioned, or people started talking, that Ryan Reynolds started taking over like production and writing. There's a scene in the movie, or in the book, but it's like a popular scene in the movie where Ryle and Lily Bloom meet on the rooftop. And in the book, it's a pretty intimate scene. Like, it's their first connection, and Ryan Reynolds apparently completely wrote the scene. Again, this actually comes from Blake Lively's mouth. Like, there's an interview where she talks about it. And so in Justin Baldoni's complaint or lawsuit, it talks about like how they just completely took over the movie. And I feel like at some point Baldoni kind of gave up on it. Of like, okay, this is you guys. You're too powerful for me. I'm not going to fight this anymore. And so he gave, I think, a lot away. Now, going back to the press tour, as I mentioned, when the movie premiered, like the big red carpet, Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni did not like enter together. They were not seen together. Well, once this lawsuit comes out from Justin Baldoni, one of the biggest receipts dropped was the fact that there were pictures of Justin Baldoni and his family and his guests that he brought to his premiere, which, if this is true, this is actually still crazy to me, that he directed, he bought the rights to, he had the vision for, okay? Keep that in mind. At the premiere, they were in the basement. There's audio of him talking about being in the basement. There's pictures of him being in the basement. And so people, again, their narrative really started to shift quick of, oh, that's interesting. Like, because Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, everybody else was upstairs enjoying it in one theater, and they were put in the basement, I think, until everybody was in that theater, and they would have to go into a different theater to watch the premiere. That is actually just crazy to me. So yeah, a lot of things were coming out after the 16th once he did the explosive lawsuit. Now, one of the most recent bombs that were dropped, again from Baldoni's team, was a dance sequence, and it was like a behind the scenes video that was leaked, shared, whatever. And again, one of the main complaints in Blake Lively's lawsuit or civil, legal, whatever it is, her legal complaint was how uncomfortable she was in this scene and how like he would like go kissing up her neck and that wasn't in character. She didn't consent. And so Justin Baldoni dropped the video. And I'll be honest, I think this video doesn't look great in the favor of Blake Lively. When I watch this video, and again, outside looking in, I do not know these people. I do not know the atmosphere of the room. I do not know their heads. Outside looking in, it looks like they both have very different ways of what intimacy looks like. So in the montage, they're doing like this dance sequence that they're going to play throughout the movie. And the goal is to like create an intimate feeling. Justin Baldoni mentioned in the video, you can hear the audio, where he's like, me and Emily, who's his wife, we don't talk. Like, we just stare at each other. So it's like this intense stare. Well, Blake Lively feels uncomfortable and is like, well, Ryan and I talk. And for me watching it, it's not uncomfortable in the sense of like sexual harassment uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable in like the nervousness of like, okay, you're not my partner, but I'm looking directly in your eyes. You're not my partner, but we have to be in character. You're not my partner, but this is intimate. And it just feels like, okay, how do we kind of give and take here? Now, I will say Baldoni mentions his wife quite a few times in the video. And Blake Lively mentions Ryan a couple of times. But there are a couple of times where he kind of goes like up her neck. It doesn't look like he's kissing it, but he's kind of like putting his nose like up her neck. And again, it looks like it's in character. Now, again, do I know if that was part of the script? I genuinely don't know. But I think from what the allegations were, that was not part of the script, but Justin Baldoni was saying there wasn't a script. It was more like we're going to figure this out as we go in this scene. The other big thing to note was the intimacy coordinator, as I mentioned beforehand. Blake Lively had said there wasn't one and she needed one to come back. Now, Justin Baldoni, after this lawsuit took place, he said, I offered one, she didn't want one. And so there's this back and forth of like, well, did she lead a lot of the intimate moments? Because then there was this video that blew up on TikTok a couple months ago before the movie even came out, where Blake Lively is seemingly, allegedly directing Justin Baldoni in an intimate moment. So people are like, how are you directing? But also talking about how he made you feel uncomfortable, which I think two things can be true. So I don't want to totally dismiss that. But anyway, going back to what's coming out, this video of them dancing. And I will say this, it's intimate, like without doing anything physical. It's intimate, the way they're staring at each other, the way they're talking and being silly. And as soon as they say cut, Justin Baldoni's like, okay, next. Blake Lively lingers again in the video. Now, I will say, I do not think Blake Lively is a great actress. I think she's Serena van der Woodsen in every role that she plays. Do I think she's stunning? Absolutely. But do I think she gets parts because she's a great actress? Absolutely not. So maybe it's not easy for her to snap out of, or maybe that was just her. Now, one of the main theories that have been going around, well, no, let me finish the timeline and then we'll go through some theories. So anyway, this video comes out, and at first her team's actually thankful that it came out because I think they thought, oh, people will see this and see how uncomfortable she is. Nope. People were like, no, she's nervous because she's in love with him. No, she's nervous because, she's just attracted to him. Oh, she's not even nervous. She's not even uncomfortable. She's the one leading. She's the one directing. People were not on her side yet again. So they actually tried, Blake's legal team actually tried to put a gag order on Justin's legal team saying they can't keep talking about this. They can't keep sharing things. But it was actually just denied because here's the thing. When Blake Lively initially filed, it is believed that she went to the New York Times or some connection to the New York Times, and she was the one that made it public first. So she can't make it, her team can't make it public and then expect him to not fight publicly because she brought it to the light. He's going to bring it to the light as well. So that was actually denied. And then just recently, Candace Owen came and did a video talking about how she actually has a source close to all this. And allegedly, this is all Ryan Reynolds. So Blake Lively has been currently painted as like the villain going against Justin Baldoni and how she's just horrible to him. But allegedly, news sources are coming out talking about it's actually Ryan Reynolds who got jealous of the fact that Blake Lively felt a connection to Justin Baldoni, or felt jealous of Justin Baldoni just because he's seemingly more emotionally mature, so on and so forth. So that's where we're at. So that is where we are at currently. Oh wait, nope, one more thing actually just happened today. There was a voice memo that was released from Justin Baldoni's team. And this voice memo is a voice memo that was, number one, done at 2 a.m. Let me just say, I don't get Hollywood. I don't get the lack of boundaries. I don't get all that. If my husband was receiving a voice memo at 2 a.m., and I know she texted him at like 1:50, so he was responding. Number one, why are we texting all that when you all should be sleeping? Because I know they're not on set at this point because they're texting each other and voice memoing each other. But a voice memo was released, and basically he's talking about how sorry he is that he maybe made her feel unseen or unheard, or maybe dismissed an idea that she had. Something that Blake Lively has been very vocal about in every role that she does is how much she loves to be involved, whether it's help producing, whether it's help directing, being a part of something. She doesn't just want to act in the movie. And so I think there was a moment where she had suggested something and Baldoni didn't receive it well, and he's very apologetic, and it seems sincere, like, I'm so sorry that I made you feel like that. I need you to know that you have a voice, that you are empowered, blah, blah, blah. And he goes on and, really talks about how much he values her heart, her opinion, her thoughts on this project, and how lucky he is to be working with her on this project. So it seems encouraging. Again, the whole 2 a.m. thing is throwing me off just a little bit. I'm like, you could have responded in the morning, like later. But maybe I just don't understand that world. So that's where we're at right now. Okay? Here are some of the theories that are kind of going around in regards to why this is all taking place. I would say the most recent, in my mind, one of the most plausible theories, again, theory, not facts, but theories that's going around that actually makes sense to me, is that this is actually more Ryan Reynolds than it is Blake Lively. Now, Blake Lively is being dragged through the mud, and Ryan Reynolds too, but it's definitely Blake Lively head first. And a theory that Candace Owen had brought to the table that I'm like, I could actually see this being plausible, was there was feelings caught from Blake Lively to Justin Baldoni. Because again, even watching that dancing scene, I'm like, and listening to the voice memo, there's an emotional maturity that as women is just attractive. And Justin Baldoni's not ugly, like, duh. And so people believe that Ryan Reynolds caught wind of the connection, or Blake's feelings towards him, or attraction towards him, or whatever the case may be, and put a stop to it immediately. Because apparently, not only did he write one of the scenes, but apparently he was on set like every day, where he was like not letting Blake Lively out of his sight. There was even rumors where there's an alleged fight between Reynolds and Lively, and they just really got into it. The other thing that, and this is the reason it makes sense to me, the other thing to note is when Lively and Reynolds met, they were working on Green Lantern, horrible movie, but they were working on Green Lantern, and she was, I think, like 23, 24, and he was in his 30s, so there's a little bit of an age gap. But he also been married twice, I think. And at that time, he was married to Scarlett Johansson. And there had always been kind of like rumblings of him being controlling over Scarlett Johansson and the projects she could or could not take. Now, the rumors are that Ryan Reynolds is very particular, controlling of what roles he wants Blake Lively to take. And so as she's doing this film, creating a connection, emotional connection to a man who's not him, that can be intimidating, because the other thought is when they met on Green Lantern, he was married to Scarlett Johansson, as I mentioned, and it's alleged that they started a relationship while he was still married. And it's believed and alleged that Scarlett Johansson wants nothing to do with Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds. Understandably so. So anyway, those two kind of met in weird circumstances, and sometimes it's that saying, how you get them is how you lose them. And I'm sure Ryan Reynolds in his head was like, well, that's how I got her. Maybe that's how Justin will get her. Now, again, to be clear, it is believed that Justin Baldoni is very into his wife and was very strict on, I'm married, this is my wife, and was very cognizant of that. even though he maybe, I would say again, maybe lacks some boundaries. Outside looking in, it seemed like he lacked some boundaries. But to me, that's probably the most plausible explanation that took place. The other thought that has kind of been floating around is that Blake Lively caught feelings for Justin Baldoni. And instead of like admitting that, when Ryan Reynolds found the text messages, because some of these text messages, I'm like, oh, that's a little too much. Anyway, he found the text messages, and instead of owning it, people believe that Blake Lively was like, well, he's just making me feel so uncomfortable, and that she twisted it on him, which then made Ryan Reynolds mad at Justin Baldoni, which then created this whole mess that we are in. I think that no matter what, it's sad because the premise of the movie has been completely lost, I feel like now. And it could have been a really powerful moment. I do think Blake Lively missed the mark when it came to promoting it, talking about it, when it came to interacting with people about this movie. I, again, have never been a fan of Ryan Reynolds. I do think Blake Lively is beautiful. I've never been a fan of her, though. I even like the whole Gossip Girl thing. I just always thought she came off as a mean girl, not a fun, bubbly girl. Now, I actually just found out that she's the youngest of 5 kids, and she's a Nepo baby. So I think there's a sense of entitlement that's not acknowledged enough. So maybe that's a part that I also just never clicked with. I also think Justin Baldoni, from what I've seen, what I've heard, very little. I don't know about his past in regards to acting on other sets. I do think this movie was very intimate, which again, that's Hollywood. That's how movies are created. And so I wouldn't be surprised if some boundaries were crossed, even in communication. I'm not talking about physical boundaries or they slept with each other. I'm not saying that. But I think emotional boundaries can be crossed, and that can sometimes be harder to recover from than physical boundaries. And so I would be uncomfortable in the sense of like receiving text messages or sharing things at 2 a.m. With anyone outside of my husband. Don't think that Blake Lively is going to recover from this. It might be as bad as Amber Heard. And Amber Heard was not even nearly as big as Blake Lively. Unless there's some crazy evidence that they're just holding back until the trial, this is just not looking good for Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. If they're in an unhealthy relationship, that does make me sad. I will say people oddly praise them a lot for being like this goofy couple. Again, I don't necessarily always see it as goofy. I think they're kind of like mean to each other, but maybe that's their style. I don't think that's a great style of relationship. And if he is somebody that wants to monitor the role she takes out of insecurity, not cool, not good. I don't like that at all. I'm interested to see how Taylor Swift plays into all this. Will she back Blake Lively and be publicly supportive, or will she privately part ways? I don't know. But that's the drama between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. That's all I have for you guys. This is a long one, but I'm glad you guys stuck it out with me. And hopefully this helps you understand what's going on. Hopefully this helps you stay up to date if you care what's going on between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, which I know I should not care. I'm very aware of that, but I do find it very interesting. But I'm so glad that you guys stayed until the end. I'm so glad that you guys are here and that you're part of the community. Again, if this is your first time here, I am so glad that you watched this video. I would love for you to go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and turn on your notifications. That way you're notified when brand new videos are out and ready for you to view. Until next time, guys.